4, 3, 2, 1, and we're going live. Welcome everybody to healthyseminars.com. My name is Lauren Brown. I'm the founder of Healthy Seminars. I'm also a clinical director of AcuBalance Wellness Center in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. And today is Throwback Thursday, and our watch party is with the late Ray Rubio. And I'm really excited to present this and introduce to many of you who Ray Rubio was and is to many of us. And I'm going to just share my screen here because there's an interesting story that goes behind all this stuff. So let me just bring up my screen here. And I'm just going to, I'll start with housekeeping, and then I'm going to go into what we're going to listen to. The idea behind what we're doing here at Healthy Seminars, we started this, Healthy Seminars has been around since around 2008. It was called Protease Seminars back then. And since March 24th, 2020, we wanted to create a community where we could learn as practitioners, and public can come to these talks as well. It was geared towards practitioners where we have a chance to learn, take this knowledge for ourselves, so inside to help heal ourselves. Basically, the first one was Conscious Tuesday series, finding calm in the presence of uncertainty, and to take this information and then share it with your community, with your patients through your telehealth, and to create community. So we're doing physical distancing. However, we don't believe that we're doing social distancing. It's physical distancing. And so we can still have social solidarity and social innovation. So we started putting these, Conscious Tuesday was first, and then Throwback Thursday, where we had all our cameras on and we got a chance to listen to a presenter or watch a replay from an old talk and do it together with our cameras on. And then at the end, we would open up our mics, which we'll do today, to just kind of connect each other's and to discuss. So that was kind of the idea behind it, and it's grown. So on healthyseminars.com, on our resources page, and now thank you, Sandro, from the team. He put a link to that right here on the menu bar. But if you can find it on the homepage halfway down, or just go to the top menu bar. And we just keep adding content here. So we have telehealth information, we got topical webinars, we got TCM knowledge and naturopathic knowledge around COVID. We got our Conscious Tuesday, Throwback Thursdays, we got herbal classes, virtual pregnancy consult stuff, and then our live CU stuff. So if you click on anything, it will just take you to that section. And then right under that, we kind of have about a week's worth of what's happening. So here's where we're at today. Just want to let you know that this is April 16th, 2020. And today we were supposed to start the Integrative Fertility Symposium of 2020. And this is why it's so appropriate to have Ray Rubio's presentation, because we had to cancel because of COVID-19. And I'm going to share the story behind how this presentation came about. I do want to let you know that we are still doing some IFS. So we're showing Ray's keynote from 2017 in a moment. And then we have on Friday, Dr. Joseph Perzano. He's the founder of Bastyr University. He's written many textbooks, many co-authored with Michael Murray. He's doing a 3-hour, 9-week fertility detox program course that was planned for IFS 2020. Now we're going to do it as a live webinar. And then Jacqueline Chasse, she's a naturopathic physician. Her pre-symposium, which was supposed to be happening now, has been moved to Saturday. And this was a great naturopathic functional medicine approach, A to Z, the whole approach on how to assess, test, and treat with respect to fertility. And then on Sunday, Randine was also supposed to do a pre-symposium talk, and that's got moved to Sunday rather than today. So she's got her talk. And then if we scroll down, there's a whole bunch happening. As you can see, a whole bunch of other stuff happening, free content happening. And then on the, where is it? It was the, oh, here it is, 26 in front of my face. Robin Murphy was also supposed to do a pre-symposium today, and it's got moved to next week, where she's going to talk about DNA genetic testing and how practitioners can use this. We're doing this at AcuBalance. This is fantastic. And how you can use this to help individualize your treatment approach to your patients, especially those that have been diagnosed with endometriosis, fibroids, fertility, auditory disorders. It's really cool stuff that you're ahead of the curve if you start to bring this into your practice now. It's quite exciting. And then Lori Deschars, it's not on the list here, but hers happens in May. her talk that she was going to do. So we still have some of these talks that are available if you want to do those for practitioners. I just want to let you know. But let's go to our Throwback Thursday and talk about Ray Rubio here. So Ray was a doctor of Chinese medicine, lived in California, in the Los Angeles area, and he started an organization, a nonprofit called the American Board of Oriental Reproductive Medicine, the ABORM. It was his dream to just bring practitioners together and make sure we all had a minimum competency when it comes to treating fertility. So we know the Chinese medicine side of it, and we knew the Western, so we could really integrate and be of good service to our patients. And one day, Ray came to me around 2015-ish, 14, 15. He talked about it on many occasions. But Ray wanted to have a conference for fertility. And I have run healthy seminars and run workshops and weekends, but never a conference, just workshops with one or two speakers. And he liked the idea of us all coming together. And one day he said, Lauren, I would love you to build a conference around the exam. I want a destination exam. So for his ABORM exam that happens once a year, it's always in the States, but he wanted to have it in Canada. And he loved Vancouver. He came to visit a lot, and he suggested I build a conference around his exam. So that's how the IFS idea came about. The ABORM was going to have, which they did their exam, and I would build a conference around it. And it was supposed to be a one-off in 2015. Well, as many of you know, it went 5 years, 2015, 16, 17, 18, and 19. And we just had a council for 2020. And after we got our momentum going for the year of 2017, Ray was going to be the keynote speaker and offer a lecture. He didn't the years before because it was just so busy with the ABORM and IFS as the co-chair. It's just too much on his plate. But now that we had our systems in place, he was ready to teach. And unfortunately, around in December 2016, Ray got diagnosed with terminal cancer. And he knew that this wasn't a battle he thought he could win. And so he wanted to let me know he's not going to make it. And obviously, he doesn't think he'll live long enough potentially to do the keynote. So he's not going to do the keynote, understandably. And a couple of days go by, and Ray had regrets about not being able to address his peers one more time. So I suggested to Ray that we move forward with him being the keynote presenter. And what we'll do, Ray, is we'll record it. And just to have it as backup. And what the plan will be is you're going to come and do it live in person. But for whatever reason, if you're not well enough to travel, then we'll stream you. And if you're not well enough to be streamed, or worst case scenario, you're 6 feet under. Ray and I had if you know Ray's humor, that's not insensitive, by the way, for Ray, then we'll play the recording. This way you still get to address your colleagues one more time, which he really wanted to do. He was a brilliant practitioner, like brilliant practitioner. He taught at many of the schools in California, and he spoke around the country as well, teaching. He was a very brilliant fertility acupuncturist and herbalist. And so that was the plan. So we kept Ray as the keynote, and his health deteriorated quite quickly. And in January, I decided to go and visit him to say goodbye. And I brought my camera in case we had a chance to film him, but he was quite ill, so I didn't really have expectations. I didn't even bring my tripod because I knew whatever we would do would be short-lived, as in he couldn't do something more than 15 minutes. After 15 minutes on the phone, Ray would get tired. So I have a conversation. I go to Ray, I visit with him, and you're going to see the recording I did. And I will share with you that I was in disbelief because when I went to meet with him, and I stayed at his house for a couple of days, the first day, he looked fatigued. He didn't look like he was up for a talk, but he wanted to do it. Went to his office, we recorded it, and something happened while he was teaching. He had no notes, and you'll see his energy changed. It was just brilliant. He was like channeling something. He just was there. He was so present without the notes. And that's what we're going to share with you today. Now, back in the day, we did a GoFundMe for Ray's two children, his two beautiful children, Jesse and Savannah. And and gratefully, this course helped raise some money for that. This is a picture, actually, of what it looked like in 2017. In April, Ray had already passed. This is the audience listening to him. There's over 300 people in the room, in the standing room, also that you can't see, listening to us play his recording that we're about to repeat for you. We do have this lecture. This lecture is available for one CEU on healthy seminars. So we'll put the link up. And as I promised to Ray, when I recorded this, I said, what do you want me to do with this? And he said, well, knowing you, Brown, you'll try and make money off me while I'm dead. And I said, is that permission to do this? And I said, I'd like to use it to help raise money for you and your family. So that's what we did. And so today, for anybody, when you buy this course, if you want to get there's no CEU watching it through Throwback Thursday, but if you go and purchase it on Healthy Seminars, I will use that profit again and give it to his children. We don't have the GoFundMe, and I know his wife Tatiana, so we'll go on Amazon, get a gift card or whatever, but whatever money comes in, I'm just going to go and, like I said to him, I'll give it to your kids again. So that will be the plan for that. So if you want to get a CEU for this, you'll have already watched it. You can buy it on Healthy Seminars, and you just have to do the assessment tool and you'll get a certificate. There is a coupon code that you can use to save 25% on it. However, if you want to help buy his kids gifts, that both just had birthdays, by the way, in the last 3 weeks, that's where the profit's going to go to. So that will be that lecture, and that's what we're about to start with. I just want to see if I had anything that I needed to share with you guys. The community unity immunity idea here at Healthy is we want to bring you guys together. So at the end of this, we're going to open up our mics so you can kind of connect to each other, say hi, send your love to each other, and it's just about us coming together. I will share with you that we have the symposium lectures happening this weekend. We have a whole bunch of on-demand courses. The whole site on demand is on sale at 25% off using the coupon code HEALTHY25. And the live webinars, the coupon does not work because they're already discounted. So I just want to let you know the coupon won't work for these upcoming live webinars because they're discounted. And even though there's a date when the early bird is supposed to expire, while we're in stay-at-home orders, while we're in isolation, we are going to keep the live webinar early bird rates as they are. We're not going to raise them until isolation's over. And the coupon Healthy25 and on-demand recorded courses is good until the end of April. However, if we're still in isolation, we're going to keep the site on sale as well. And on the Healthy Seminar site, I'll remind you, under resources, we get tons of free resources, and we're adding every day because we wanted to give you some information. We know many people don't have any income coming in, so we just wanted to give you a place to keep learning, to feel inspired, and to connect with each other. And so at the end of this, we'll open up our mics and we'll talk to each other and connect to each other. So if we can bring up the video, I want to share with you, disclaimer. Yeah, we always tell you, I don't know if it's so relevant, but the disclaimer is basically, this is meant for educational purposes. This is not meant to be medical advice. If you have a health condition, please do seek out a healthcare provider. This is for educational purposes only. All right, let's get the video ready. I'm going to get ready to mute myself. And so this is Ray Rubio's keynote address that I filmed at his home, at his office in January. And if you could see what he was like before and after, it's night and day. During this recording, he just had all this energy. He loved to teach. He loved to give. I'm going to share with you that he is authentic. He becomes incredibly vulnerable in this. So it may open up your heart. It's a beautiful, beautiful keynote. And I hope it gives you something that it gives to me every time I watch it. And for that, those that never met Ray Rubio, when we give our love at the end, let's give our love to Ray Rubio when this is all over, because he started the ABORM. He's the one that got me to move into the IFS. And he was just a force in the profession of Chinese medicine, especially when it comes to fertility. He mentored many people. So Sandra, whenever you're ready, let's start the video.
Hi everyone, and welcome to IFS 2017. I'm excited you're here. If you're watching this, most likely I'm not here. Just before Christmas, as some of you know, but not all of you know, I was diagnosed with stage 4 terminal pancreatic and liver cancer, kind of out of the blue. And it's pretty rapidly progressive. So it's most likely, this is January right now, first week in January, so it's most likely I won't be here to welcome you to IFS, but thankfully with technology I can share with you some of the things I've learned over a lifetime of Chinese medicine and learn from life itself in this keynote address. So thank you all for coming. Thank you all for taking the time. So what we're going to talk about today is what I call knowing your story. How it can lead to a more authentic and robust practice and life. You know, throughout mankind's history, all the way back to the Aboriginals, to the North American Native Americans, to the first peoples of Canada, mankind has always told stories. It's how we pass down our history. It's how we know who we are, where we come from, and where we're going. There's a saying that without a vision, the people perish. And, you know, I firmly believe that. I think that we're all connected on this planet, and we're all connected to each other, and that the borders that we see on maps are largely artificial, and that the wisdom that we share with each other is what really nourishes us. And that comes on a personal level as well. I know some of you know that I had the great fortune to study with Dr. John Shen for the last 10 years of his life. And the part that I loved the most in sitting with Dr. Shen and studying with Dr. Shen was watching him with patients and watching him perform case studies and examine these patients and explain what was going on with them, because it really helped me to think and to understand what a doctor of Chinese medicine does. Whether it's with fertility or rheumatoid arthritis or whatever it is, you know, those mysterious cases that always end up at our doorsteps because Western medicine can't figure it out. You know, that's kind of how Chinese medicine excels, and I'd like to share some of that with you today so that you can come away and feel like you have a new way of approaching things. You know, Dr. Shen used to say that being a good doctor of Chinese medicine he used to say it's like being like that English detective. He could never remember Sherlock Holmes' name, so that's what he called him, the English detective. And it really is like that, you know. It's being able to read between the lines and see the clues and see things that patients aren't telling you, and see things by observing them, not just asking them questions. I remember one time I was with Dr. Shen in his office in New York. I would go out and I'd sit with him for a week or two and watch him do patients, in addition to running errands and picking up his relatives at the airport and, you know, all the other stuff I had to do. But that was, you know, par for the course. And it was at the end of a day, and normally what would happen with Dr. Shen is, you know, I'd sit there in the office and patients would come in one after another, and he'd sit on one side of the table and they'd sit on the other side of the table, and Dr. Shen would say, you know, what's your problem? That was his shorthand for, you know, what's going on with you. And so they would start to tell him what was going on with them, and he'd ask very pointed questions about when did it start, when is it better, when is it worse, blah, 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 blah. You know, and then he would feel their pulse, and he had a little pulse pillow on the table, on the table there, and he had his watch out, and he would feel their pulse and count it and make notes, and then he'd feel their, you know, the other pulse and count it and make notes. Then he would look in their eyelid, and then he would ask them to stick their tongue out, and he'd ask some more questions, and then that was it. You know, then he would tell them a few things, and typically he would, because the whole time he was doing the pulse diagnosis, he was also doing Palmer diagnosis and facial diagnosis. He would start to tell them, you know, this is when this started, and maybe you remember when you were 10 years old, this happened, blah, 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 blah. And you know, they'd just be astounded, and I'd be astounded. You know, he would be picking this stuff up, like this is how it started. And then he would tell them to go wait in the waiting room, and he would write an herbal formula, and they'd come back in and he'd tell them how to take it, and he'd say, okay, come back in 2 weeks, take your herbs, get lots of rest, etc. And so that was kind of how it went. He'd see like 10 patients a day. No, he had assistants that did acupuncture, stuff like that, but he just did the herbal formulas and did the diagnosis. And this one time, it was like at the end of a day, and we're in New York, and this woman comes in, very high class, dressed to the nines, and she comes in with this whole retinue of followers with her. And usually Dr. Shen would only allow the patient in, and sometimes if they were really, really sick, he'd allow their spouse in, but I'd never seen him allow like 4 or 5 people to follow a person into a room before. And so she came and she sat down, and all of her people were behind her, and turns out this woman was one of the Chanel family, so from Paris, extremely wealthy, had flown over that day just to see Dr. Shen. And that's why all those people were with her, because they were all of her handlers. And Dr. Shen sat her down and said, what's your problem? And she started, bursting into tears, and was just beside herself, obviously clearly distraught. And she said that about 2 years prior to that appointment, she had started having blinding migraines just out of the blue. And they were debilitating, and nothing helped. Pain relievers barely touched it. Sitting in the dark didn't help. And obviously, as a child of the Chanel fortune, seeing the best doctors in Europe was not an issue. She saw natural doctors. She saw holistic doctors. She was admitted to the best institutes everywhere, and no one could figure out what was causing her headache. She had CT scans to see if she had space-occupying lesions. She hadn't bumped her head. It was just on and on and on, and no one could figure out what was going on with her. So Dr. Shen kind of, was looking at her and asked her some more questions, and then, like I said, he felt her pulse, for a few minutes, made some notes, looked in her eyelid for a few minutes, made some notes, looked at her tongue, and then he kind of sat back and he looked at her and he said, so, where are you staying in New York? She said, well, we're staying at the Plaza. And he says, oh, I've stayed there many times. He said, are you seeing a show? And she said, no, I just came to see you. And she started crying again. She was obviously very, very distraught. She said, Dr. Shen, I know you're trying to be nice, but, I didn't really come here to socialize. You're my last hope, and I don't know what to do, and I can't keep living like this. And, it was so painful to watch this poor woman suffering. And Dr. Shen, patted her hand for a second. He's like, oh, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. And he leans back and he looks at her and he says, because I think maybe 2 years ago, right before these headaches started, you started using a new eyeliner. And she said, yeah, that's when we launched our new 24-hour mascara eyeliner that would stay on for 24 hours. And he said, yeah. He said, that's the cause of your migraines. He said, it's going directly into the bloodstream and directly into the brain. That's why it's not showing up on any labs, and it's causing this allergic reaction. That's why you're getting these headaches all the time. Because if you stop using that, the headaches will go away. And her tears slowly dried up, and she stopped, and I was staring at him like, what are you, Jesus now? I mean, how does that happen, And he's like, yeah, you don't need herbs. Just, stop wearing this eyeliner and you'll be fine. And sure enough, that was the end of her migraines right then and there. And after she left, I asked him, I said, how did you figure that out? And he said, well, he felt in the pulse that there was this kind of turbulent quality that felt like inflammation. He wasn't sure what the cause of the inflammation was until he did the eyelid thing. When Dr. Shen, one of his diagnostics was to check the eyelids, especially the lower conjunctiva of the eyelids. And he said you could see if there was chemical inflammation or drug abuse inflammation or prescription drug inflammation or injuries. You could see this in the lower eyelid. And so he said when he looked at her lower eyelid, he saw there was inflammation, But what was most interesting to him, because he saw patients all day, every day, and checked their eyelids in all women every day, he said it was the first time that when he checked the eyelid, he got the mascara on his finger and he couldn't get it off when he had a little tissue by his thing. And he said that was the clue that gave it away. Because normally when he checked their eyelid, he'd get some on his finger and he'd just wipe it off on a Kleenex. This one, it wouldn't come off. So he knew there was something different about this. And he saw the inflammation and he put 2 and 2 together, and that was the cause of her headaches. And the reason I tell that story is because, you know, sometimes I think we think that a Zong Fu diagnosis or a Zong Fu pattern is a diagnosis, when in reality a Zong Fu diagnosis is a way of reframing the imbalance in the patient. But real Chinese medicine takes a step back and tries to see what caused that imbalance, right? If we presume that most patients are in homeostasis and are in balance, what caused them to become out of balance, and when did that start? You know, I remember Dr. Shen would see patients sometimes that came in, and based on their pulse and based on what he saw on the eyelids, he would find, and based on their facial diagnosis, he would see these old injuries that may have happened like when they were 10 years old or something, and they fell off a horse or something, or they had a skateboard injury. And later in life, it would lead to fatigue or disorientation or headaches or whatever. And he would say, well, that's because when you're young and you get an injury like that, the qi and blood circulation is so strong you can rebound from it. When you're older, those old injuries catch up, right? And when the qi and blood needs are consumed with daily life, there's not as much to go to repair things like that, and so you'll start to feel the effects of it. You know, he used to say that before the age of 30 we can cheat disease, and after the age of 30 disease catches up. So, you know, today as part of my talk, I want to emphasize knowing what your story is, looking at your story and seeing the miracles in it, knowing how to do rewrites in your story, right, like a good script, surrounding yourself with a good cast, right? Because that's part of what makes your story compelling and manageable, and also sharing your story. So that's what we're going to go over today real quick. It's not all directly TCM related, because I think, you know, this whole weekend you guys are going to be given so much amazing information by so many great teachers, so many of whom are colleagues of mine and friends of mine, that you're going to walk out of the symposium full to the brim with information. You know, but I'm reminded what Dr. Shen used to tell me all the time, and I'm not even sure that he's the original one that said this, but it was one of his favorite sayings. He said, always remember, because, you know, I was always asking him questions, well, what about this, and what about that, and what do you mean by this, and what about that? And Dr. Shen would just look at me and he said, you know, always remember that patients don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And that's where knowing your own story comes in, because we each have a very compelling story that brought us to be doctors of Chinese medicine. And regardless of whether you specialize in herbs or acupuncture or Japanese style or Chinese style or infertility or obstetrics or whatever, it's your story that gives power to what you do. And I firmly believe that. So let's go ahead and get started, you know, and I'm going to share with you a little bit about what my story is, so you can see what I'm talking about in knowing your story. Of course, being that I probably won't be here to give this talk in person, let me just start by saying that I'm pissed that I'm not going to see season 7 of Game of Thrones. I can't believe it, that you guys get to see it and I don't. That's really disturbing. But I guess the flip side of it is I have backstage passes to David Bowie, George Michael, Leonard Cohen, Prince, you know. So, you know, I'll be up there enjoying the best concert in the world while you guys have to stick around with Trump. So I guess it's all even. Anyway, so A little bit about my story. I was, my mom and dad split when I was a child. My mom had issues with substance abuse. My father, I guess to keep it simple, my father was a Spaniard who had no patience for a wife who was a product of the 70s and very outspoken. So they did not get along so well, and they split when I was a baby. I was pretty much raised in an orphanage and in and out of foster homes. And, you know, back in the day, they would try to always place you back with your birth parent because it was believed that that was the best thing to try and reconcile that relationship. Now we know that that's often the worst thing you can do is to try and keep putting the child back with the birth parent because the birth parent is often damaged themselves and needs help. So, you know, there were many times where I was put back with my mom in between foster homes and from the orphanage, the state home. And it was just one nightmare after another. Just chaos and violence and never knowing what was going to happen next. And, you know, I remember one time, just to give you an example, one time I was put back with my mom and she took me shopping at one of the local department stores. And, you know, I can't remember if we were buying clothes for me or for her or for both of us, but, you know, I must have been 5, something like that. And I was running around between the clothing racks, you know, like when you're a kid and it's like the ultimate fort. You can hide and fun and this and that. And anyway, so I was doing that just because I was bored out of my mind. And at some point, I got lost, right? I didn't know where she was. And I came out from one of the racks and I couldn't find her. And, you know, it couldn't have been that long, maybe 20 minutes or something. But, you know, in kids, time is different, right? So I started looking around for her and I was getting nervous because, you know, I didn't want her to be upset. And finally, I went up to the help desk and I said, you know, I've lost my mom. I was over here and I showed them what department I was in and blah, blah, blah. And they said, oh yeah, she came up here looking for you. We think she's waiting for you outside. So I ran as fast as I could down the aisle of the store to find my mom outside because, you know, again, I didn't want her to be pissed. And she was outside, standing in front of the store leaning up against our car like this, with a look of fury on her face, so I could tell she was not pleased. And I walked up and I was, you know, I'm sorry, Mom, I got lost, I didn't realize what time it was, and blah, blah, blah. And what I hadn't noticed is that her arm was on top of the car and it was holding something, and what it was holding was a crowbar. And she took that crowbar, bent me over the car, and started beating the crap out of me in front of that store. And there was a crowd of people gathered around watching this. And the thing that struck me in that moment, aside from this is wrong and no parent should ever the thing that struck me about it is that the shame. I don't even remember the pain. I just remember the shame. And I'm not telling you this story to get shock or sympathy or anything like this. I'm telling you this story because this is part of owning your story. Part of owning your story is not letting things like that define you. And that was just one example. And they weren't all at the hands of my mom. Some of them were things that the foster parents did, or things that, you know, no child should have to go up. And I know in this room, I know many of you in this room, many of you are my colleagues, and I've heard some of your stories, and I know that horrific things have happened to you as well. And I think that's part of why we're drawn to Chinese medicine, because it allows us to heal. Because every patient that we see is a teacher. And they're healing us as much as we're healing them. So I want you to know, it's important to know your story, to embrace it. The good parts, the bad parts, the joy, the sadness, the grief. You know, that's what life is. And our stories make us who we are, and knowing who you are and where you come from gives you a strength, not a weakness. And it allows you to go and to hold space for patients who are going through very difficult times, and to be okay with that, to not be afraid of it, right? So I encourage you, know your story, look at it, know where you come from, know your family's history. My best friend David, his family was exterminated in the camps. His father was a Polish rabbi who barely made it out of Poland in time before Kristallnacht. And if his dad hadn't made it out, I would never have known David. And there's stories like this all over the world and all over this room today. For those of you who are here, we all have these stories of courage and survival and tenacity and surrender and overcoming. And I really want you to embrace that, because if you regularly embrace your story and honor it and remember it, it's not as easy to get caught up in the day-to-day small stuff, because your story informs who you are and where you're going. And so it allows you to have a vision and a purpose in your life. You know, remember again, without a vision, the people perish. And that's not just on a group level, that's on a personal level. People get distraught, people get burnt out in their practice, they get burnt out in life, they lose hope when they forget their story, when they forget their purpose, when they forget their vision. So remember your story, remember who you come from, sit down with your relatives and your grandparents and your cousins and do a genealogy, remember who you are and where you come from. I can't encourage you enough. So, the first part, remember your story. Know where you came from. The second part, look at your story and look for the miracles in your story. Throughout my life growing up, repeatedly, in places where I would least have expected it, in and out of foster homes, in and out of an orphanage, and so on and so on and so on, there have been people that I firmly believe were guardian angels. And they came in all shapes and sizes, jobs, things you would never recognize, you know, whether it was the janitor at one of the elementary schools that I was at while I was in one of the foster homes I was at. You know, like when you're in the foster care system, often you change schools and change families every 6 months or 9 months or every year. And I mean, you know how it is when you're a kid. Every time you start a new school, it's so hard to get to know people, and you're the new kid, and it's embarrassing, and everyone else knows each other. And you know, and when you're a foster kid, the other weird part about it is, even though you're living with this family who may have kids that go to the same school you're at, they have different last names. So all the kids want to know, why is your last name different than them? And so you feel compelled to have to explain to them what your, you know, why you have a different last name than the other kids. And that part's embarrassing. And so you end up feeling embarrassed and spending most of your time alone and not getting to know anyone. And I remember at this one school, you know, I'd be kind of by myself a lot of times at lunch and during recess. And this one janitor, this African-American guy, who really didn't say much, kind of kept to himself, sort of became my friend, right? And his name was Joe. And, he taught me about his job and, showed me how to screw in a screw and how to fix things. And, I couldn't have been more than second grade or third grade or something like that. And he taught me about integrity and doing the right thing, being honest, not being judgmental. And I still look back at that year that I was at that school and what I learned from him and how he became my best friend for that year that I was there. And on and on and on throughout my life, there have been people like that. Dr. Shen was an example. Dr. Shen is one of the greatest, in my opinion, one of the greatest doctors of Chinese medicine in the last 200 or 300 years. And he had had several students before me, Leon Hammer, of course, being the first and foremost. Dr. Shen himself told me that there have been many students who came to study with me, but only one really learned, and that was Leon. So the rest of us got a chance to sit with Dr. Shen, but really only Leon was able to take what Dr. Shen was doing and repeat it. And, why would Dr. Shen take me on as a student? He was 80 years old. He was getting up there in age. His energy was not what it used to be. And he'd had many students. Why take me on? I was nobody. I was someone fresh out of Chinese medicine school. I don't know the answer to that. I just know that there have been people like that throughout my life that have been there at just the right time, who have helped me become the person who I am, and the doctor I am, and the teacher I am. And I think if you examine your life, you'll see that there are people like that in your life, all throughout it, that have been there at the right time in the right place, and have taught you things that maybe you didn't even recognize at the time would inform who you become later. So, when you look at your life, look for the miracles. They're everywhere. And sometimes they might be small, sometimes they might be big. You just never know. But they're important, And if you pay attention, again, they become part of your story. Just like the children of Israel escaping Egypt and the Red Sea parting and all the miracles that took place. Your miracles become part of your story and let you know that you're on the right path, and then it's going to be okay and you don't need to give up. I remember another time, this was when I first had just started practicing, and my friend Chris and I were practicing at another acupuncturist's office, just doing a fee split, because I had literally just graduated from acupuncture school and just passed my state boards and had no patients. And so we were seeing her overflow patients, and we were there for like 6 months, maybe a year, something like that, and had gotten our own 6 patients each, very small number of people we saw kind of on a regular basis. And in the meantime, Chris and I had been out looking for our own spaces. We knew we wanted to open a practice together. We were great friends. We wanted our own place. So we would go there and work during the week, and then when we weren't there, we would go look for our own place on the east side of LA. And we looked, and finally we found a place. And we found a place that was kind of run down, had been an old hair salon, so it was covered in chemicals and kind of disgusting. So we spent 3 months scrubbing the place down and cleaning it up and painting the walls and and getting it ready and getting ready to sign the lease on this place that would be ours. And it's always a big deal when you go out and practice, especially like Chris and I. Neither of us had a big nest egg to invest, so we were kind of going out on a limb. And I'll never forget the day we gave notice at the practice we had been at on the west side, and we told them we were opening our own practice. And we went to sign the lease at the new place, and I looked at my schedule for that week, and I think I had 5 patients scheduled for the whole week. and maybe 1 on the first day and 2 on the second day, and that kind of very sparse. And so we signed the lease and we paid our money, and my first patient came in, and I kind of had a policy at that time, which I still do, that if it's a patient's birthday, they get a free treatment, right? I don't charge them for that. So this patient came in, and I gave her treatment and etc. And as I'm checking her out, I had no assistant back then because I couldn't afford it. So as I was checking her out, I said, so what are your plans this weekend? She goes, oh, it's my birthday today. So I'm going out. And I'm like, of course it is. Happy birthday. Your treatment is free today. Which of course I meant, but at the same time, it just couldn't have been worse timing, because I just, I was eating top ramen every day, and I put my last penny down on the lease, and I really needed that $75. So anyway, so that was it. Sent her on her way, wished her happy birthday, went home, and I'm driving home, and I'm thinking to myself, this is a bad idea. You shouldn't have done this. The world's going to cave in. And then I started reminding myself of the miracles and of the guardian angels that had been there with me, and even finding this office, what a miracle it was. And I got home, and I walked in the door, and the phone rang. And, this is before cell phones, right? So the phone rings at my house, and I pick it up, and it's this guy, David. Now, David had been a patient of mine at the previous practice, the one I'd been doing the fee split at. And David was a bodyguard for the band U2, who's my favorite band of all time, bar none. I went to school for a year in Ireland, actually, as a study abroad program through UCLA, and I saw U2 for the first time in Dublin and been a fan of theirs ever since. So anyway, Dave, what it comes down to is when the band is getting ready to go on tour, each member of the band has their own personal bodyguard to protect them when they're going from set to set and place to place. And David was Larry Mullen's bodyguard, the drummer, and he had injured his knee playing Ultimate Frisbee or something like that. And so he'd been seeing me at that other office because if his knee wasn't up to par, they were going to leave without him and get a different bodyguard, and he really wanted to go on tour with them. It was the Pop Mart tour, the one where it was all the big stadiums and outside and the big flashing lights, and it was going to be like a 2-year tour, so he really wanted to go. So I had helped him, and his knee was fine, and he was able to go on tour, and the first opening date was in Vegas. And they'd really been rehearsing a lot, and this is the first time they'd played outdoor stadiums. Like normally U2 plays indoor arenas, so they were concerned about Bono's voice. You have to project a lot more in outdoor stadiums. They weren't sure how it was going to be pulled off. Anyway, so it's David on the phone, and he goes, hey, Dr. Rubio, he goes, I want you to know, we're in Vegas. The show went great last night. He said, but, he said, Bono's losing his voice. He said, Adam has insomnia because he's on the wagon. He said, The Edge has tinnitus. And he said, Larry has got tendonitis from the drumming. And he goes, I told them all about what an amazing job you did with me and how you fixed my knee and blah, blah, blah. And he said, so, we're leaving this afternoon for Memphis, the second tour on the second date on the tour. And he said, I hope it's not too much to ask, but I told him how much you helped me. And we were wondering if we could fly you out to Memphis and you could treat the band members and, help Bono with his voice and blah, 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 blah. And, we'll pay for everything. We'll put you up in the hotel. We'll fly you out first class, and we'll pay you really, really well for coming out and doing this. And he said, so I just had to call and see if there's any way you could possibly do that. He goes, I know you have a busy schedule and this and that. And I said, well, David, hold on one sec. Let me check my schedule. Right. Yeah, I think I can do that, actually. So suffice it to say, I got on a plane that afternoon, flew first class to Memphis, stayed in the hotel on the same floor as the band, got to meet one by one all my favorite band members in the world. They all got better with the treatments, gave Bono some Xiangshen Podisan, which is a great formula that's traditionally used for Chinese opera singers when they lose their voice. So gave him that, and his voice totally came back, and he took a giant case of it on tour with him. And got to go to the concert. They gave me a backstage pass that was good for any concert they'd had on that tour in the world for the next 2 years. So I could go to Paris and go backstage. I could go to anywhere and go backstage and see them. And they paid me really, really well, on top of all that other stuff. So again, you know, a miracle. Seeing if you get in line with the universe and let go and remember where you come from and remember your story and the things you've already overcome, it's easy to welcome new miracles on a regular basis. So again, know your story, look at your story and look for the miracles, right? Be open to rewrites. So many of you don't know this, but before I was a doctor of Chinese medicine, I was in the entertainment business. I went through the agent training program at William Morris, which is the world's largest talent agency, and I represented writers and directors for a little while before I got sick of that business. You know, and you learn when you're in that business that every script is just a first script. There's always rewrites. There's always adaptations. It's never ending. There's so many pieces that go into it because this actor or that actor doesn't like how their character's portrayed or doesn't like this or whatever. So there's always, always, always rewrites, right? And so when you look at your life, when you examine it, when you look at what's going on in the present, be open to rewrites in your own story. If you feel like the definition of who you are is not where you hoped it would be or not what it is at this point, remember that you have the ability to create your own life, right? A big part of, and I think the largest part of our lives is not what happens to us, but how we react to what happens to us, right? So when you look at your life, if you're facing issues and problems that keep coming up, take a moment to look at that and maybe do a rewrite and maybe realize that you don't have to be defined by that particular persona that maybe you think is who you are. It doesn't have to be who you are. You can rewrite your life at any stage of the game, right? I mean, if you look at Tony Robbins, who's one of my favorite speakers and one of the most inspiring personalities. You know, Tony grew up in a household where his father left him at a very young age. There wasn't much support. There wasn't much encouragement. You know, and when Tony Robbins first decided he was going to start being a life coach and start inspiring people, he was basically a flop for the first bit. But he believed in himself, and he believed that he could write his own story, and that he could rewrite his story and didn't have to be defined by the script that was given him. That he could take that script and rewrite it and make it better. And each of you can do the same thing. You know, my friend Lauren is always saying that, you know, when he teaches classes on how to be more successful as an acupuncturist and how to grow your business, one of the first things he learned, and I agree with him 100% because I've seen this in my life over and over and over again, one of the best ways to rewrite your script, if you feel stuck in your business, if you feel like you've hit a plateau in your life or in your practice or in your relationships, one of the best ways to rewrite your script is to learn something new. Take a course, take a CEU course, go away for the weekend, learn something new in Chinese medicine, devote yourself to a training program. Maybe it's classical Chinese medicine, right? Maybe it's Jingfeng. Maybe it's a new acupuncture style. Maybe it's immersing yourself in fertility if you want to learn that and you feel like you don't know enough. Maybe it's a personal journey, like taking 6 months on a sabbatical and going to an ashram and training yourself and learning how to meditate and find that quiet space. There's many, many ways to learn something new and to embrace a new part of yourself that's waiting there. It's waiting there all the time. You just have to open the doors. So, again, if you find yourself stuck, if you find yourself wondering what the next step is, don't be afraid to rewrite your script. Don't be afraid to learn something new. And don't be afraid to try something new. So many times I've had people they ask me about doctoral programs. So what about the Yosan doctoral program in reproductive medicine? Or what about this 2-year program in this? Or should I sit for the ABORM exam? It's a whole year or 2 of studying and this and that. And I'm already 42, I'm already 45, I'm this, I'm that, I'm the other thing. Or I'm thinking of, studying to become an RN, and so on and so on and so on. I'm always struck by the fact that, let's say you're 40 years old and you decide you want to take a doctoral program, a DAOM, and you want to do the one at Yosan, and it's 2 years, and once a month for a whole weekend, and a lot of studying and a lot of papers and this and that. Just remember something. 2 years later, whether or not you do that Yosan program, you're still going to be 2 years older. You're still going to be 42, right? Why not be 42 with a DAOM? Or if you're going to do a nursing program at the age of 40, why not be 44 with an RN? Or if you decide midway through your life you want to become a physician, why not be 45 or 46 with an MD? There's nothing stopping you. Don't let age be some artificial boundary that you think keeps you from pursuing what you want to pursue. Right? It's all yours. All you have to do is step out in faith. And if you do decide to go for it, what's that famous saying? The journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. It's just one step after another. And you'll find your way. And before you know it, 1 year becomes 2, 2 years becomes 3, and you've got a whole new life and a whole new group of friends and a whole new group of colleagues, and you're doing what you love. Don't put off until tomorrow what you can do today. When I got this diagnosis, so many people have asked me, are you afraid of dying? Are you angry? Are you this or that? And I can tell you with complete honesty, no, I'm not. I think part of it, as I've shared with my friends, is that I have lived in one life what most people don't live in 3 lives. I've traveled the world, I've studied abroad, I've had multiple careers, I've overcome challenges that not many people face and turned lemons into lemonade, as they say. So this is just one more chapter in the journey. I'm not going through the 5 stages of grief because I don't have a bucket list that I need to go check off. I've checked off my bucket list throughout my life. I haven't put things off. And I encourage you to do the same. It's never too late. You're never too old. You can do whatever you want. You have the support you need if you'll just reach out and ask for it. Right? I remember when we started the ABORM, so many people were concerned and worried and, had misconceptions about what the purpose was and where we were going, and, just day after day, year after year, surrounded by friends, we just tried to do the right thing. And I remember probably 8 years ago now, at one of the exams, because we always held the exam in conjunction with the conference, Lauren and I were sitting down having tea or something, and we thought, how cool would it be to have a fertility-only symposium where, we could bring out all our friends and colleagues and people we know are such great teachers and just have a whole weekend devoted to really high-level teaching of fertility. And at that point, it was just a vision for us. We didn't know how or when we'd be able to pull it off. And now here we are at IFS 2017, the 3rd year in a row. Every year is more successful than the one before it. This is our tribe. These are our people. This is who we look forward to seeing every year. Every one of you is part of the family. And we're not joking when we say that we think this is the best conference we've ever been to, period, every year. So be open to new ways of thinking and new ideas, and be open to rewriting your script, and don't be afraid to start from scratch, okay? And that leads me into the next subject, which is part of knowing your story and living your story is surrounding yourself with the right cast, right? So you guys, everyone here at IFS 2017, you are all part of my cast. You're all part of my story. You've all touched my life in ways that many of you will never know, and hopefully I've touched your lives. And that's worth more than you know. You know, sometimes until you're facing your own mortality, you don't realize how even the smallest meetings and the briefest exchanges are transformative. And it's not till later that you see that. So surround yourself with the right cast. Surround yourself with people that share your vision. If people are negative and they're naysayers, it's okay. Bless them in their path, but don't try to convince them. Don't slow yourself down. Surround your people with people who share your vision, who want to go where you're going. There are many paths in this life, and not all of us share the same path. So if someone doesn't share your path and isn't interested in going where you're going, that's okay. Let them go where they're going, right? What's most important is that you follow your path. And part of that is surrounding yourself with the right cast. So I know in my life, my friend Lorne, Dr. Shen, Chris Axelrod, Catherine Anderson, Randine Lewis, Alan Jansen, Jane Littleton, on and on and on and on. There's so many of you, I can't even name you, partially because I'm on painkillers right now, but you all know who you are. It would take up the rest of this talk to try and list every single person. Many of you I've known as colleagues, many as students, many as teachers, and I think all of you have played each of those roles. So if you were a student, you were also a teacher. If you were a teacher, you were always a colleague. That's really what's important, you know. As you go on your path, and as you walk your story and do your rewrites and look for the miracles, you know, remember at the end of every day, it's good to sit down and break bread and appreciate those who are on your journey with you, right? And give thanks for that opportunity to learn what you've learned, to share what you've learned, to honor each other. You know, because life is in the moments. It really is. And lastly, so you know your story. You look at your story and you look for the miracles. You're open to rewrites in your story. You surround yourself with the right cast. People who share your values and share your vision and share your heart. And lastly, you share your story. And what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is like what I'm doing with you right now. I'm sharing with you parts of who I am and how I got here. And that's important, whether it's with your family, whether it's with your friends, whether it's with your students, whether it's with your patients. You know, you won't share all of your story with everyone, but share your story, because every time you repeat your story, you give a part of yourself and you give permission to that person to share their story. Sometimes we think, like in my instance with my mom, you know, the shame can become unbearable, and we think that it's something we need to hide, when in reality it's something we need to embrace and share, because then it gives permission to someone else to shine the light on the things that they think are shameful, when in reality they're not, right? We all have things that we've overcome. We've all had horrific experiences. But when we shine the light on them and our friends look at us and say, hey, that's okay, right? I've been through something like that, and they share their story, there's healing that takes place, and we can see those things for what they are. It's just steps in our journey. They don't define us. And so, you know, as you enjoy this weekend and as you go on in your lives and in your practices, I hope that you'll take the time to look at your story. I hope that you'll take the time to look back at your story and look for the miracles, because I promise you they're there all the time. Little ones, big ones, they're always there. I hope that you'll be open to rewrites and open yourself to learning new things all the time, because it just makes your story that much better. The more willing you are to learn something new, to try something new, you know, even if you fall flat on your face. It's like Muhammad Ali said once. He said, there's no shame in going down. The only shame is in not getting back up again. So don't be afraid to give it your best, and if you fall down, if you don't succeed, just get back up again and try again. That's where the real courage comes. Make sure you surround yourself with the right cast. Look around you. Take the time to tell the people that you consider to be part of your family and your tribe. Take the time to tell them, I value you. My life would be less joyful and less full if you weren't in it. And lastly, I would encourage you to share your story. I want each of you here this weekend, as a favor to me, to take the time to pull someone aside who you know and who you value, and I want you to share some of your story with them. Take the time to sit down and let them know who you are, where you came from, what you're doing, what your hopes and your dreams are. I want you to walk away from this conference and this symposium not just with more knowledge, but with more depth of friendship, with more of a tribe, with more of a community. Because that's what will sustain you through life, and that's what's going to sustain you in your practices when you get down. That's the important stuff, I promise you. Everything else is just details. The important stuff is sharing who you are, embracing who you are, talking to your cast members, learning new things, and trying to do it all with a sense of humor, a sense of joy, and a sense of discovery. All right? Without being too corny, because I know it's used all the time in yoga and in holistic medicine circles, but in reality, the term namaste means that I bow to the sacred in you, that there's God in each of us, and if we recognize that, it helps us to see who we are and who everyone else is in our lives. Namaste. It's been a joy. A joy knowing you.
It was a great rehearsal. I'm going to press play. then we'll see if we get it on tape. Very beautiful. Okay, I think that was my sixth time watching that. Just reading your comments. You know, watching that again, I'm amazed because I heard for the first time Ray talking about know your story and get yourself aligned with the universe. And I teach this, I live this now, but I didn't know that in 2017. Yet he talked about it. And so many of the things that Ray is sharing in his talk resonate with me, and I'm living more now, but wasn't living that way in 2017. So it was so interesting to hear this again, because I don't think I've watched this talk since 2017, since he did the keynote. It's the last time I watched it. So it's been a few years. We're going to open up the mics in a moment. I do want to share with you a few things about this talk. I'm glad you guys came, and hopefully you'll stick around. I see the numbers on here that you don't just jump off quite yet, because it's about community. One is, it is available on Healthy Seminars, so you're welcome to purchase it, and it will stay in your account. As long as we can continue to support the recording on Healthy Seminars, it will stay in your account. And you can earn one CEU by doing the assessment tool. And as I shared, the profits will go towards Ray's and Tatiana's children. Hi, Tatiana. Ray's Tatiana, his partner, the mother of his children, the woman he was married to, is on here with us. So hello, Tatiana. Also, if you want your peers to watch this, because I really think it's important, and I push the email and social media hard to let people know, because I think this is healing. I think this is something we all need to hear. And so please do let them know that they can go to the Healthy Seminars, either through the resources or the Throwback Thursday link. So if you go to the Throwback Thursday link, we're going to keep this up there minimum 48 hours, probably keep it up until the Sunday. This one, okay? So there's the link. It's healthyseminars.com/throwback Thursday. So you can check that out there. Anyways, if anybody has anything to share or whatever, they welcome to raise their hand. But I thought we'd open up the mics and let's give our love to Ray. And just as we're getting ready to do this, I just listened to his introduction again. How he, as we know, he didn't miss much for Game of Thrones season 7. wasn't so great, but his Trump comment, I mean, that was in the early stages of Trump, so it's quite funny. And Ray had good humor, and we joked around, as you can see at the end, because some of you don't know me personally or don't know Ray. That was the best part, when Ray was in his most vulnerable moment, when he said namaste, and I was able to screw with him and say I forgot to hit the record button, and just his reaction was genuine. He just went into laughter, not anger, right? And so that was Ray Rubio. He had a quick wit. He was funny. He was smart. He was giving, but he had his boundaries as well. And he had a lot of he had a lot go against him when he tried to start, and when he started the ABOR, it was a lot of resistance, but he persevered. And so I'm glad we had this talk. I want you to share it. The IFS has been amazing. 5 years we did it. And those recordings are available. So if you want to see those lectures, they're all available on ifssymposium.com for purchase. They're there. 5 years of incredible content. They're not approved for CEUs, just so you know, the recordings are not. There is no IFS 2020. COVID took that away. It takes over a year to plan. There is no IFS 2021 either, just so you know, because we don't have the ability to start planning that yet, and it takes over a year to plan, because we do it well. I do think it's the best conference on this planet for Chinese medicine, and it doesn't happen overnight. I hope to create something that brings us together. I have ideas, and something will come through me, and we're doing this now, connecting. I will share that if people stop emailing me about when their IFS refund's coming, it will leave me more time and more creative energy to manifest something special for you guys. We're almost there, by the way. I said April 30th with IFS refunds. I think I got 50 left. So as I do these all day, you should know that I stay up between 11 and midnight to 11 to 12:30 to refund, because I know people need their money. So I am doing my best to get that back to you guys for IFS 2020. It's a 10-hour time suck of my life that I'll never get back. And so I'm doing a little bit each day. Let's open up the mics. Let's send our love to each other, to Tatiana and their children, and to Ray, because what a gift he gave us. That talk, I told you, I don't know where it came from. I know Ray and I love Ray, but this was like a Ray I didn't know. And it just was, and I was shaking. I had no tripod. And I zoom in on him once in a while, because he was just different during the talk. Before and after was not the same Ray physically, but his spirit was so powerful during that. It was like he had a miraculous healing. I thought I'd witnessed a miraculous spontaneous healing while he delivered that talk. I kept on doing this with my camera and then zooming in to get a closer look at him, like, is what happened? It was just something special. So if you're touched by it, because It's more than the 3D Newtonian world. There's that quantum level. There's something beyond the five senses that talk can deliver to you. You experienced it just now. Really, you did. I did it every time I listened to it. I know it's more than just words. He didn't have his notes. He had like a little piece of paper he looked at once. This is special stuff. Do let your colleagues know. And if you want to have this in your account to watch it again on an anniversary, a yearly or more often, then put in your account and we'll put those profits towards his kids. Anyways, guys, check out healthyseminars.com/resources. We'll have more fun stuff for you. I'm planning to do something special for you guys on April 28th on Conscious Tuesday. So stay tuned. I think I'm going to do a Conscious Tuesday talk. So stay tuned for that. And let's open up our mics and send your love to each other and connect for the next 5-10 minutes if you like.
That was wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Ray.
It was great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. That was
Thank you, Ray. Thank you, Lauren.
such a valuable
Yes, Lauren, thank you.
Thank
Great
you,
time.
Ray. Thank you,
That was
Lauren.
really lovely.
What a gift.
Thank
You
you.
very
much a gift.
appreciated that. Made my day. Thank you.
Very inspirational.
Community, everybody.
Today.
Beautiful sharing.
To see you
Thank you
all.
so much.
Was so needed.
Thank you.
Hi, Joanna.
Come on.
Came prepared.
Thank you so much.
Does anybody have anything you want to share or chat? Let's meet everybody, and then we'll see if anybody wants to say anything. We'll just kind of get some discussion. Raise your hand. If you have any words you want to say just about what's going on for yourself, life, Ray, whatever, you can do that, and we're happy to give you mic rights. Anybody that's part of the ABORM that knew him through the ABORM or whatever, you're welcome to share anything. Otherwise, we're gonna drop off soon. I'm just looking at all my friendly faces there. Seeing Susan Fox. Nice seeing you again, Susan. And Bonnie's there. Hi, Yvonne. Oh, Janice is on there. That's great. I'm from Vancouver here. Nice seeing everybody. Just gonna take a look. There's John McDonald. And John, I feel like we're buddies now. I see you so often this last couple of weeks, seeing you all the time. So it's nice. Bon's there. Carolyn, we got our Trudeau just announced more stuff for the small business in Canada. The IFS became popular the last couple of years because the Americans were trying to make asylum in Vancouver. They wanted to come in IFS, never leave again. We had our asylum room for you guys. You guys will make it. There's Sharon again. Yeah, just look at Jane. Jane, I like looking at Jane's image because she's always chilling out when I look at her. She always looks so calm and relaxed. Looking good there, Jane. All you guys, Sherry. Hi, Sherry and Kim. And there's Kia. Kia's also somebody I've recognized a couple times on here. And then Joanna, I've known you for years and years. So yeah, nice to see you again. And there's Tatiana. There's your beautiful face. Hey, Tatiana. Her kids both just had birthdays in the last month, so they're growing up fast. They're taller than you are now, Tatiana. Kids have gotten tall. So if there's no hands up, I'm just gonna, oh yes we do, Yvonne. All right, so let's get the ball rolling. Thank you, Yvonne. You have your microphone.
I feel like it was a privilege to watch this beautiful history from Ray, and I feel so moved, and it made me cry. And then I thought, so many times I've shared things with my patients and wondered, is that okay? But Ray's basically saying, yeah, it is okay. And, your journey, I feel so sorry that he had to be hurt as a child. And I have 7 children of my own. And I just can't imagine anyone hurting a child or being the hurt child, because that woman was hurt herself, as Tatiana explained to us. And then I think, not till my daughter went to college did I go to college. And then later I became an acupuncturist. So it's like I've done so many things before I got to this point. So I feel like, yes, you're constantly reinventing yourself, but we're still who we really are. At our core, we don't really change. And that was beautiful listening to this story. I feel like I know Ray now. which I
Exactly.
didn't know before today.
That's what we work with. Chi, that's energy, right? That's beyond the five senses. And yeah, allopathic conventional medicine, we're separate, right? So we don't share our story. In Chinese medicine, we're connected. So our paradigm's a little bit different than the monopoly or the mainstream medicine, which is conventional orthodox medicine. So yeah, there's read a room and there's a time and place to share your story. And Ray was great at that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So thanks for sharing, Yvonne. So that's been fantastic. All right, guys, we do have to jump. I know there's some hand raises here, but I got more stuff I have to get doing, so I got to jump. And I just realized I didn't mean to do intermittent fasting, but I haven't eaten yet today. I've been here with Sharon Weisenbaum's group and Suzanne this morning. Then I had telehealth, and then I had this, and so I'm going to wrap this up. And I'm going to tell my kids I'm alive and let them see me. And then I have another webinar meeting I have to prepare for. And then I got to do some more refunds. I'm going to have so much free time once those refunds are done. That is the biggest pain. Somebody says, do another one. I don't want to do another one because if it gets an earthquake or a bad president's elected or another virus, this unwinding has been much harder than the building of IFS. And most of you have been patient, but there are a few people that just keep emailing and calling visa on me and this on me. And it's just a nightmare. So there are a few people that just suck up all the time. I apologize. Maybe I'll public shame them and start posting them on my Facebook page. So then people know not to do it. But it stops me because we have to respond and then I have to deal with all the logistics around it. So, so there is no IFS 2020 or 2021, but we'll do stuff together. We always do. We'll find ways. And you guys are coming out here. I love it. We got our tribe happening here. Like we got Ray's tribe happening here today. This was fantastic. This was always his dream. And when I came out to record it, I mean, there's so many funny stories that goes behind. Like when Ray was on literally his deathbed, when I was visiting him, he was such a stubborn ass, Ray, and funny. And even in that moment at his house, he was still so difficult to be with. I stayed with him for 3 days, and just the craziness. He was so weak, and he was wanting to clean up and do everything in the house. And I remember I was telling him he needed to go to bed, and he didn't like the idea of me telling him what to do or anything like that. And at one point, I was trying to help him prepare him food, getting his house organized, getting things ready for his passing, right? Getting his all the stuff, the abortion, everything was getting ready. And he's just sitting there listening. And you can see Ray Ray's pissed off face. Susan, you know what I'm talking about, right? You can just see Ray's get a little pissed off as I'm trying to help him. And then he goes, "You tired?" I'm like, "I'm not tired." He goes, "Oh no, you look tired. Lay down." "What?" "Yeah, you have a nap, lay down." And then I remember I said, "What's the deal?" And he goes, I wanted to bring a cleaning lady in, pay to have a cleaning lady come to his house. And he says, "I don't want anybody touching my shit." And I remember he slams his door and goes to his room. Didn't come out for 3 hours. And 3 hours later, everything was good. But for 3 days, I just remember laughing and crying and fighting with Ray. And he did say that his body's over. But he said his spirit was so strong. And he was trying to describe it, but he was at peace with death. In January, he was already ready to die. Even in December, he was at peace. He wanted to live for his children. He really did. I remember he wouldn't take a lot of his pain meds, the doses they recommended, because he wanted to be coherent for his children. He didn't medicate him the way he was supposed to, because he didn't want to be in pain. He didn't want to be incoherent for his children. And I remember he said, I am spiritually so sound. I am so good. I am so at peace. My body's done. It can't be saved. My spirit's great. And I now see that talk, I've watched it 6 times, and every time I've watched it, it's had a profound effect on me. And every time people have watched it, like you guys have had it, it's had a profound effect on you. So it's just fantastic. I want to jump off, but and Tatiana's here. So I want to open up the mic for Tatiana because she's here. So Sandra, I can't do it. Can you open up her mic, please?
Thank you so much for doing this. This is just really amazing and so touching. You know, the second I hear the timbre of his voice, it just brings me back. Of course, you and many know that, you know, he wasn't always the easiest person to live with, but was a brilliant, brilliant practitioner and incredible values, and really, you know, I still miss him to this day. But, you know, he gave us all a lot. He gave us all an incredible gift. Gave me, you know, an incredible gift. And this is Savannah here. She's about to turn 17 on Friday.
Happy birthday.
Friday.
Wait,
Next
what?
week. But what I wanted to just say to everyone, that we have all learned with having someone close to us pass, is that death is not the end. Right? Like, he
Last night, by the way, I didn't go to bed till 2:40.
Oh no, he comes to us. He comes to the kids a lot. He will kind of, he's doing something right now too. He will flash sparks and he will sit on the end of the bed, and Savannah will feel pressure. She'll feel his presence. I will feel him in my practice when I'm treating a patient that I've inherited from him. After he got sick, I triaged a lot of his patients and took over probably a good third to half of his patients. And in the very beginning, and still to this day, he will make himself known in the treatment room. He will make a certain smell appear. He'll flash a little spark in the corner of the room. Yeah, he has a very funny sense of humor still. And the kids will say to me, even, you know, the last 2 nights, he kind of likes to make himself known. So, you know, if you loved him, if you knew him, talk to him, because he's right here. And I firmly believe that realm, you know, there's a very thin veil between this world and that love is the light that connects us to our people. So when you feel that love for him and you talk to him, it pulls him to you, and you can kind of connect in that way as we have here. So my heartfelt gratitude to you all, Lauren, and really appreciate your very generous, you know, your generosity in terms of donating the contributions from the CEU, and it's wonderful to see you all and be with you all here. Do you want to say hi? You got Ray's shirt. She always wears Ray's shirt to bed. So I don't know if you can see it. It says acupuncture.
That's like oversized t-shirt.
This was one of his originals. So we love you guys, and thank you for keeping his memory alive.
Hey, Tatiana, thank you very much. And that's how we'll end today's Throwback Thursday. Thank you. Happy birthday. Happy birthday.